I wanted to do a quick mini review so that we can understand kind of where we're situated in the narrative line and how we're progressing now along a new thread. In the beginning, very beginning of the second canto, of course, everyone remembers that Maharaj Parikshit was cursed to die in 7 days, gave up his kingdom, and Sukadev Goswami met him at Sukratal, and he asked, what is the duty of every man, and especially one who's about to die? And the basic answer that Sukadev Goswami gave him was Ante Narayana Smriti. Somehow or other, at the end of life, the goal is to, at the time of death, remember the Lord, remember Narayan, Ante Narayana Smriti. Then Sukadev Goswami went on to explain the first step in that realization, to see everything in the universe as a manifestation of the Lord, with the Virat Rupa, the universal form of the Lord. Then he progressed to a higher realization of the Lord by explaining and describing the path of Astanga Yoga, meditating and realizing the Lord in your heart. The Lord is there with every living entity. These were the first 2 chapters. The first step in God realization, then the Lord in the heart. Then came pure devotional service, the change in heart. And that chapter is mostly a transference. Sukadev, remember that part where he was describing, if you want this, then worship this demigod. If you want that, then worship this demigod. And he gave a whole long list. And then he finally came to Akama Sarvakamova Mokshakama Udadadi Tivrena Pakti Yogena Yajeta Purusham Param. Then no matter what you want, if you actually want the benefit, the highest benefit from your worship, then you should worship the Supreme Lord. After hearing this, the narrative changes to Shonaka Rishi, speaking again with these sages at Namasharanya, and glorifying the path of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, hearing and chanting about the Lord as a means to remember him. Because remember, that's our umbrella topic, Ante Narayana Smriti. After Shonaka speaks to the sages, the next chapter is the process of creation. And everyone should note that this chapter, the process of creation, which was chapter 4, shifts the narration of the Srimad-Bhagavatam onto this topic of the creation of this material cosmos. And that topic is so complex, so foundational, so important, that it goes all the way through the 3rd canto, which will be very elaborately described and explained. Now, it starts off with Maharaj Parikshit asking some questions about the creation, and that's why I want to pick up now. So let me switch on to sharing my screen so you can see the topic, and then we'll progress from there. So this is only the beginning of March lessons 1 and 2 that we'll cover. And this is a quick review from chapter 4. Maharaj Parikshit's basic questions were Srimad-Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, chapter 4, texts 6 and 7. I beg to know from you how the personality of Godhead, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods. Kindly describe how the Supreme Lord, who is all-powerful, engages his different energies and different expansions in maintaining and again winding up the phenomenal world in the sporting spirit of a player. Then what we won't be able to cover because of the change in venue. A couple of weeks ago, there was that other Zoom meeting, so we missed a part. But basically, the end of chapter 4 was Sukadev Goswami offering prayers to the Lord before he enters into that topic. And within those prayers, there were various concepts of the creation, but we've already covered that part. But in the final text of chapter 4, text 25, he says, "My dear king, Brahma, the firstborn, on being questioned by Narada, exactly apprised him on this subject, as it had been directly spoken to him by the Lord, as it had been directly spoken by the Lord to his son, who was impregnated with Vedic knowledge from his very birth." So at the end of chapter 4, the topic by Sukadev's narration will shift to the conversation between Narada and Brahma, where Brahma is explaining to his son about these topics. So now we'll go on to chapter 5, the cause of all causes, and Samapriya will take over organizing who's reading.
Before I do, I'd like to just say that Srila Prabhupada's purports are very profound, and they are filled with an enormous amount of transcendental knowledge. So obviously it's impossible for us to cover every single point in the purport. So we've just selected some. It doesn't mean that they are the most important points. We just had to make a decision of what to read for the review. So that's why this wasn't an editing program. It was merely to take some points so that we can discuss them. Because actually, you could spend weeks discussing one purport. So, and we only have about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. So I just wanted to say that. So we'll begin with Faye and then Vaishnavi. So Faye, could you begin reading Srimad-Bhagavatam 251 and then Vaishnavi?
Shri Narada Muni asked Brahmaji, "O chief amongst the demigods, O firstborn living entity, I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Please tell me that transcendental knowledge which specifically directs one to the truth of the individual soul and the supersoul." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Narada asked to receive the knowledge, and Brahmaji imparted it upon being asked. Therefore, asking for transcendental knowledge from the right person and receiving it properly is the regulation of the disciplic succession. This process is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita 4.2. The inquisitive student must approach a qualified spiritual master to receive transcendental knowledge by surrender, submissive inquiries, and service.
Very good, thank you. Vaishnavi and then Mohit after Vaishnavi.
My Srimad-Bhagavatam 2.5.2. My dear Father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is all this being done? Purport. Transcendental knowledge regarding the soul and the supersoul includes knowledge of the phenomenal world and the basis of its creation. In the phenomenal world, three things are factually observed by any intelligent man: the living beings, the manifest world, and the ultimate control over them. The intelligent man can see that neither the living entity nor the phenomenal world are creations of chance. The symmetry of creation and its regulative actions and reactions suggests the plan of an intelligent brain behind them. And by genuine inquiry, one may find out the ultimate cause with the help of one who knows them factually.
So before we go on, Patti, could you put back the previous screen? So we see the last part of the purport. The inquisitive student, yes, the inquisitive student must approach a qualified spiritual master to receive transcendental knowledge by surrender, submissive inquiries, and service. And Prabhupada said this is the key of spiritual life. This is the secret to approach the self-realized soul in this manner. So this is also an example of everything that Prabhupada says in his purports are pristine, like axiomatic facts. So that's to be very nicely considered, those three qualifications. Thank you. Next, we'll have Mohit and then Pritam Day.
My dear Father, all this is known to you scientifically because whatever was created in the past, whatever will be created in the future, or whatever is being created at present, as well as everything within the universe, is within your grip, just like a walnut. Did I continue, Mata?
Yes, read
Yeah.
the whole page.
My dear Father, what is the source of your knowledge? Under whose protection are you standing? And under whom are you working? What is your real position? Do you alone create all entities with material elements by your personal energy? As a spider very easily creates the network of its cobweb and manifests its power of creation without being defeated by others, so also you yourself, by employment of your self-sufficient energy, create without any other's help.
Okay. Patti, you have something to say about that?
No, what I wanted to do was kind of cover Narada's questions and then go into the Brahma's answers, more or less fluff that out.
Okay, so you can change the page and Pritam read, and then
Okay.
Tisha.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 2.5.6. Whatever we can understand by the nomenclature, characteristics, and features of a particular thing, superior, inferior, or equal, eternal or temporary, is not created from any source other than that of your Lordship, thou so great. Text 7. Yet we are moved to wonder about the existence of someone more powerful than you when we think of your great austerities in perfect discipline, although your good self is so powerful in the matter of creation. Text 8. My dear Father, you know everything, and you are the controller of all. Therefore, may all that I have inquired from you be kindly instructed to me so that I may be able to understand it as your student.
It should be understood, and if you think about it, how can we possibly know details of how this universe was created? There's so much speculation. When we were first studying this years ago, I went online when we were doing it online and found like a description, a graphic from Duke University of the Big Bang theory. So in colleges, they go into these whole big descriptions about how this whole universe manifested from nothing, just an explosion. And all of a sudden things appeared. And one time in BTG years ago, there was a really good cartoon. There was a stork flying over a neighborhood, and in its beak was a big like cloth filled with pipes and nails and wood and all the ingredients to make a house. And that stork was flying over the neighborhood, and it dropped the cloth, and when everything landed, it was a house. How foolish is that theory, that everything just came from nothing and all of a sudden came up to this fantastic, intricate manifestation that we see before us. So here, even one of the first beings in the whole universe, even Brahma himself, couldn't figure out anything until Krishna instructed him. And that will be described and enlightened here. But here, his son, Narada Muni, is inquiring from Brahma all these details. It also reveals the unique position of this personality of Brahma. Everything in the universe is known to him. He's omniscient. He knows everything. Just like when one has a walnut in his hand, he realizes all the details because he can just look at it. So although he's a jiva, he's that powerful. Anything else before we go on?
Also, in text number 7, we see that's the real crux of it. Narada sees that Brahma is dependent on someone else. He sees that he's praying to someone else. He's performing austerities, which would indicate there is someone greater than him who is giving him instruction and the potency to perform his service of creation. So that's a very important point. That one verse shows us the whole direction of where Narada Muni is coming from. He sees that Brahma is not self-sufficient, so he has some doubts. And then we can go on. Does anyone else have anything to add to that? If you do, you can raise your hand. If not, Tisha and then Aesop.
Thanks. Lord Brahma said, "My dear boy Narada, being merciful to all, including me, you have asked all these questions because I have been inspired to see into the prowess of the Almighty Personality of Godhead." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Brahmaji, being so questioned by Narada, congratulated him, for it is usual for the devotees to become very enthusiastic whenever they are questioned concerning the Almighty Personality of Godhead. That is the sign of a pure devotee of the Lord. Such discourses on the transcendental activities of the Lord purify the atmosphere in which such discussions are held, and the devotees thus become enlivened while answering such questions. It is purifying both for the questioners and for one who answers the questions. The pure devotees are not only satisfied by knowing everything about the Lord, but are also eager to broadcast the information to others, for they want to see that the glories of the Lord are known to everyone. Thus, the devotee feels satisfied when such an opportunity is offered to him. This is the basic principle of missionary activities.
That's when a soul is inspired by Krishna. He actually wants to speak about Krishna and glorify him all the time. So now we'll have Aesop and Madhurya Leela.
Whatever you have spoken about me, this is Srimad-Bhagavatam 2, 5, 10. Whatever you have spoken about me is not false, because unless and until one is aware of the personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate truth beyond me, one is sure to be illusioned by observing my powerful activities. Purport. The frog in the well logic illustrates that a frog residing in the atmosphere and boundary of a well cannot imagine the length and breadth of the gigantic ocean. Similarly, the material scientists also want to challenge the inconceivable potency of the Lord by measuring him with their frog-like brains and their scientific achievements. But at the end, they simply die unsuccessfully like a frog. The doubt arising in the mind of Narada about Brahmaji's becoming all-powerful is a lesson for the frogs in the well, that they may not be bewildered in misconceiving the identity of the personality of Godhead. Bracket, even by comparison to personality like Brahma. So what to speak of ordinary men who falsely pose themselves as God or an incarnation of God, close bracket. The Supreme Lord is always the Supreme. And as we have tried to establish many times in these purports, No living being, even up to the standard of Brahma, can claim to be one with the Lord.
Thank you. That this concept of wanting to be God is what brought us here in the first place in the material world. This is our problem here, that we want to be the controller. We want to be God. So this is our unfortunate plight as a conditioned soul.
Might also note that that very concept shines a bright light on why concepts of who is the creator is so important. The process of creation. Somebody might say, why is it so important? It's just the material energy. I want to be transcendental. But in actuality, the root cause of our being in this material world is being addressed. And it has to be transformed. It has to be refined and changed, actually. Otherwise, why would we be here? So,
yeah, we were discussing this morning that why are we not studying, just go straight to the 10th canto and study the gopis and their relationship with Krishna. Our relationship with Krishna is already within us. We are here in the material world to become purified so that we can reestablish ourselves in that relationship. So it's not going to change that relationship if we become very adherent to following the regulated principles and chanting Hare Krishna and reading the Bhagavatam and associating and taking prasad and following all these practices of bhakti yoga. This is what will purify our existence so that we can automatically remember who we are. So it's very important to hear these topics. Madhurya Leela and then Bhadra. Madhurya Leela.
Okay, Bhagavatam 2:5-11. I create after the Lord's creation by his personal effulgence, known as the Brahmajyoti. Just as when the sun manifests its fire, the moon, the firmament, the influential planets, and the twinkling stars also manifest their brightness. Prabhupada's purport. In this verse, Brahmaji clears up the wrong impression held by the less intelligent and affirms that he creates the universal variegatedness after the creation by the glaring effulgence of Lord Shri Krishna. Brahmaji has also separately given this statement in the Samhita known as the Brahma Samhita 5.40, where he says, I serve the Supreme Personality Godhead Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental bodily effulgence, known as the Brahmajyoti, which is unlimited, unfathomed, and all-pervasive, is the cause of the creation of unlimited numbers of planets, etc., with varieties of climates and specific conditions of life. So the Brahmajyoti is not independent or self-sufficient. Lord Shri Krishna is ultimately the creator of the Brahmajyoti, mentioned in this verse as Swarojisha, or the effulgence of the transcendental body of the Lord. This Brahmajyoti is all-pervading, and all creation is made possible by its power. Therefore, the Vedic hymns declare that everything that exists is being sustained by the Brahmajyoti, Sarvam Kalaya Idam Brahma. Therefore, the potent seed of all creation is the Brahmajyoti, and the same Brahmajyoti, unlimited and unfathomed, is established by the Lord. Therefore, the Lord, Shri Krishna, is ultimately the supreme cause of all creation. Aham Sarvasya Prabhava.
Very, very potent. This greatness of God, that's what we're hearing about. We're hearing about the greatness of God and understanding our position as his servant. That's one of the things we're reading of in this second canto. So this is really important to understand our position. Bhadra, could you read, please, and then Radha?
Just as the small seed of a banyan fruit has the potency to create a big banyan tree, the Lord disseminates all varieties of seeds by his potent Brahmajyoti, Swarojisha, and the seeds are made to develop by the watering process of persons like Brahma. Brahma cannot create the seeds, but he can manifest the seed into a tree, just as a gardener helps plants in order to grow by the watering process. The example cited here of the sun is very appropriate. In the material, the sun is the cause of all the illumination, fire, electricity, rays of the moon, etc. All luminaries in the sky are creations of the sun. The sun is the creation of the Brahmajyoti, and Brahmajyoti is the presence of the Lord. Thus, the ultimate cause of creation is the Lord.
Bhadra, can you comment a little bit on this section, which explains more about Brahma? It says Brahma cannot create the seeds, but he can manifest the seed into a tree, just as a gardener helps plants and orchards to grow by watering process.
Mhm.
So what is that example showing, and how does Brahma do that?
Just like the spiritual master bore the seed within the heart when he gives the initiation, and then after the initiation, if the disciple is following the process, strictly given the process, then ultimately that seed will fructify into the plant, and then that plant will reach at the lotus feet of the Lord. So similarly here, Brahma is the creator of this whole universe, but the seed-giving father is the Lord. Lord is the one who is seed father, and the Lord within the heart of Brahma is giving intelligence to how to do it, the creation. So Brahma, that's why Brahma is a secondary creator. Yes, I understand.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Radha, would you like to read next?
Sure.
And then Karna.
Okay. Srimad-Bhagavatam 2.5:12. I offer my obeisances and meditate upon Lord Krishna, Vasudev, the personality of Godhead, whose invincible potency influences them, the less intelligent class of men, to call me the supreme controller. Purport. Brahmaji is conscious of his actual position, and he knows how less intelligent persons, bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord, whimsically accept anyone and everyone as God. A responsible personality like Brahmaji refuses to be addressed as the Supreme Lord by his disciples or subordinates, but foolish persons praised by men of the nature of dogs, hogs, camels, and asses feel, that was from last week or a couple weeks ago, feel flattered to be addressed as the Supreme Lord. Why such persons take pleasure in being addressed as God, or why such persons are addressed as God by foolish admirers, is explained in the following verse.
Thank you. And you mentioned that was a verse from, that was one of the verses that we didn't have time to read. That was too bad, because those verses were really important. But anyway, they're all being answered now.
No, we
No?
did read those.
We read that one?
Yes, if you remember, there was a description of dog-like men always searching for
Right, I'm sorry.
service.
See, that happens. I'm so sorry. Forgive me. All right. So Karna and then Narayan.
Okay.
Please read.
Yeah. The illusory energy of the Lord cannot take precedence, being ashamed of her position. But those who are bewildered by her always talk nonsense, being absorbed in thoughts of, it is I and it is mine. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Nescience is behind the personality of Godhead, where she is powerful enough to mislead the living beings. And the primary symptom of bewildered persons is that they talk nonsense. Nonsensical talks are not supported by the principles of Vedic literatures. And first grade nonsense talk is, it is I, it is mine. A godless civilization is exclusively conducted by such false ideas and such persons without any factual realization of God, except a false God, or falsely declare themselves to be God, to mislead persons who are already bewildered by the deluding energy.
Can you say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you wanted her to speak on that?
Yeah, that's the nonsense talk. That's
I just wanted to go back one, because I think in the purport, Srila Prabhupada said something was going to be explained in this verse. The one before, he says, why such persons take pleasure in being addressed as God, or why such persons are addressed as God by foolish admirers, is explained in the following verse. So yeah, Karna, can you explain that a little bit?
Well, I don't think in the West we have a lot of people claiming to be God, unless it's superstars who are godlike. I guess we'll see in the next verse. But the other stuff about I Me Mine, that's George Harrison's classic song, I Me Mine.
yeah. So what does that mean? I mean, mine.
Well, everything is you see around you is yours. Like, you know, your house, your family, your this and that, everything is yours to enjoy. God put it here so you can enjoy, and you're supposed to enjoy it, and it's yours.
Right. So that's trying to be little gods, right?
Right. Yeah. I
That's
guess in
right.
that way. Right.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Narayan and then Gopatni.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 2514. The five elementary ingredients of creation, the interaction thereof, set up an eternal time, and the intuition or nature of the individual living beings are all differentiated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, and in truth, there is no other value in them. The phenomenal world is impersonally the representation of Vasudeva, because the ingredients of its creation, their interaction, and the enjoyer of the resultant action, the living being, are all produced by the eternal, external, and internal energies of Lord Krishna. In all circumstances, neither the material ingredients nor the spiritual parts and parcels are independent of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, for all things, whether products of the external, internal, or marginal potencies of the Lord, are simply displays of the same effulgence of the Lord, just as light, heat, and smoke are displays of fire. None of them is separate from the fire. All of them combine together to be called fire. Similarly, all phenomenal manifestations, as well as the effulgence of the Lord of Vasudeva, are his impersonal features, whereas he eternally exists in his transcendental form called Sat Chit Anand Vigraha, distinct from all conceptions of the material ingredients mentioned above.
Thank you.
This is an important building block in these topics which we're about to enter into details. Can anybody tell me from the Bhagavad Gita a verse which similarly describes the material elements? I see Bhadra raising his hand. Bhadra, what's that verse?
Bhumirapo nalo Is that the one?
Yes. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether are the material ingredients. And then in the next verse, he says, but aside from these are the living entities, which are spiritual. So one of the, again, building blocks, it's like right at the root of the tree of creation is the difference, understanding the difference between material ingredients and spiritual energy, the spiritual self. But we see in the manifestation why these topics are important. We can see it in today's world. People think that I am this body. And they think that the conglomeration of the chemicals and the ingredients which make up the body are themselves. And that when there's death, there's nothing left. It just goes into the ground and disintegrates back into the material elements again. So he's describing here that, again, another important aspect is that Brahma is pointing out some of the intricacies, just like a gardener doesn't really know the details of how the seed is being germinated and how the potency of what's within the seed is coming out. He knows how to make an environment with the earth and the right temperature and the proper water and the proper light to make that seed grow. But actually how the seed grows is a phenomenal science. So Lord Brahma is describing here that the 5 elementary ingredients of creation, the interaction thereof set up by eternal time, which means how they interact with one another, and the intuition or nature of the individual living beings are all differentiated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead Vasudeva. And in truth, there's no other value to them, because in reality, all of them are coming from that Supreme Personality. And Brahma is just organizing how they can manifest those different characteristics.
Another important point is that though we living beings are not the same as our energy, we are different than the things around us. We are separated. Krishna's effulgence is non-different than him. It's kind of like Achinta Beta Beta Tattva, because from his body, the effulgence is coming. But in fact, he is the same as his effulgence. See, everything is Krishna, but we can't say that everything is us. Just like Prabhupada always says, if someone says that he's God, you have to say, can you show me your universal form? You know, so that's the difference between us and Krishna. Krishna is everything. He is the Brahma Jyoti. Everything is coming from the Brahma Jyoti, and the Brahma Jyoti is coming from him. So this is a very hard person to try to imitate. Okay, so we'll go on with Gopapatni reading and then Sham Govinda.
Okay. Srimad-Bhagavatam 2.5.15. The Vedic literatures are made by and are meant for the Supreme Lord. The demigods are also meant for serving the Lord as parts of his body. The different planets are also meant for the sake of the Lord, and different sacrifices are performed just to please him. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. According to the Vedanta Sutras, Shastra Yonivati, the Supreme Lord, is the author of all revealed scriptures, and all revealed scriptures are for knowing the Supreme Lord. Veda means knowledge that leads to the Lord. The Vedas are made just to revive the forgotten consciousness of the conditioned souls, and any literature not meant for reviving God consciousness is rejected at once by the Narayana Para devotees. Everyone wants the eternal life of bliss and knowledge. In the material world, such an eternal life of bliss and knowledge is progressively realized in the upper planet. But after reaching there, one is inclined to achieve further progress along the path back to Godhead. Duration of life with a proportionate quantity of bliss and knowledge may be increased from one planet to another. One can increase the duration of life to thousands and hundreds of thousands of years in different planets, but nowhere is there eternal life.
So what's your realization of that, Gopa?
I got a long way to go.
Come on.
You know, every moment of our lives should be absorbed in trying to become God conscious.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Great instruction.
Don't waste any time.
Right.
Don't waste another lifetime. That's a proper.
Right. Sham Govinda, could you read and then Ekadasi?
2.5.16. All different types of meditation or mysticism are means for realizing Narayan. All, all austerities are aimed at achieving Narayan. Culture of transcendental knowledge is for getting a glimpse of Narayan, and ultimately salvation is entering the kingdom of Narayan. Purport. In meditation, there are two systems of yoga, namely Astanga Yoga and Sankhya Yoga. Astanga Yoga is practice in concentrating the mind, releasing oneself from all engagements by the regulative processes of meditation, concentration, sitting postures, blocking the movements of the internal circulation of air, etc. Sankhya Yoga is meant to distinguish the truth from epimerals, but ultimately both systems are meant for realizing the impersonal Brahman, which is but a partial representation of Narayan, the personality of Godhead. Oneness with the impersonal Brahman Jyoti is not ultimate liberation. Superior to that is the sublime association of the personality of Godhead in one of the innumerable spiritual planets in the Vaikuntha sky. Therefore, the conclusion is that Narayan, or the personality of Godhead, is the ultimate destination for all kinds of yoga systems, as well as all kinds of liberation.
Sham Govinda, can you speak a little bit about how that purport relates to the verse itself? Describing all these different things are meant for achieving Narayan. Why did Prabhupada focus on what he did in the purport?
I guess when you know the ultimate goal, then you can see on every platform how every platform, even if it's not quite absolute, can somehow relate back to the goal. So it gives one the ultimate vision.
Very nice. Yeah, perfect. Good. Thank you.
Okay, so Ian, could you read? And then
Kadasi.
Vaishnavi?
I thought of Kadasi.
Well, she's not able to read today, it seems.
Okay, sorry.
Ian, are you there? Hello?
Okay, how do you vote?
Okay, good.
Okay. Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 2, 517. Inspired by him only, I discover what is already created by him, with Narayan, on his vision as a all-pervading super soul. And I also am created by him only. For both, if Brahma, the creator of the universe, admits that he is not the actual creator, but is simply inspired by Lord Narayan, and therefore creates under his superintendence those things already created by him, the super soul of all living entities. Two identities of soul, the super soul and the individual soul, are admitted to be in a living entity, given by the greatest authority of the universe. The super soul is the supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, whereas the individual soul is the eternal servitor of the Lord. One of the Lord's names is Urukam, or one whose actions are very wonderful and are beyond the imagination of the living being. So the actions of his devotees sometimes appear very wonderful due to the direction of the Lord. Beginning from Brahma, the topmost intelligent living entity within the universe, down to the smallest ant, every living entity's intelligence is overseen by the Lord in his transcendental position as a witness of all actions. The subtle presence of the Lord is felt by the intelligent man who can study the psychic effects of thinking, feeling, and living.
What does that mean? The subtle presence of the Lord is felt by the intelligent man who can study the psychic effects of thinking, feeling, and willing. Anybody, what does that mean? Ian, do you know what that, can you give us some insight?
I could say because it's subtle, it's not so easily recognized, but you know that there's some presence guiding you, but it's not something that you could easily recognize. That's why maybe it's subtle.
Very nice.
Okay. Let me see. Vaishnavi, you want to read? And then Radha Krishna.
Okay. So the Srimad-Bhagavatam 2.5.18, the Supreme Lord is pure spiritual form, transcendental to all material qualities. Yet, for the sake of the creation of the material world and its maintenance and annihilation, he accepts through his external energy the material modes of nature called goodness, passion, and ignorance. Purport. The Supreme Lord is the master of the external energy manifested by the three material modes, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. And as the master of this energy, he is ever unaffected by the influence of such bewildering energy. The living entities, the jivas, however, are affected by or susceptible to being influenced by such modes of material nature. That is the difference between the Lord and the living entities. The living entities are subjected by those qualities, although originally the living entities are qualitatively one with the Lord. In other words, the material modes of nature, being products of the energy of the Lord, are certainly connected with the Lord, but the connection is just like that between the master and the servants. The Supreme Lord is the controller of the material energy, whereas the living entities who are entangled in the material world are neither masters nor controllers. Rather, they become subordinate to or controlled by such energy. Factually, the Lord is eternally manifested by his internal potency or spiritual energy, just like the sun and its rays in the clear sky. But at times he creates the material energy as the sun creates a cloud in the clear sky. As the sun is ever increasingly unaffected by the spot of cloud, so also the unlimited Lord is unaffected by the spot of material energy manifested at times in the unlimited span of the Lord's rays of Brahmajyoti.
Whoa, that's a packed purport. Can you say something about that, Vaishnavi?
Well, the Lord is unaffected. He creates the modes of material nature, but he is not affected by that, whereas we are completely affected by that. So
Okay.
that's all I can say.
Can somebody else help from a verse of Bhagavad Gita, maybe 7:19, about how the living entities can take shelter of Krishna and of the Lord and cross over the influence of those modes? Anantasesha?
So that 719 is the
Was it 719? No, it's not 719. I'm thinking Daivi Heshu Gunamai.
okay. So one who takes who surrenders unto me can transcend all the material modes of nature. So they come under my protection, right?
Yes.
Very good.
These
That's
modes of go ahead, Pritam.
No, I'm saying that's 7:14.
7:14. Read it.
Daivi yesa gunamai mama maya durataya maham eva ye prapuddante mayam etam tarantite. So the translation is, this divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is very difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can very easily cross beyond it.
Perfect. Thank you. So in the purport, I can see it. I can't do both screens at once. It says in the purport we just read, in other words, the material modes of nature, being products of the energy of the Lord, are certainly connected with the Lord. But the connection is just like that between the master and the servants. So he's the master of the modes of material nature. And by taking shelter of him, one can cross over those modes by his grace.
Thank you. Radha Krishna, please read. And then after Radha Krishna, Madhurya Leela.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 2:5-19. These three modes of material nature, being further manifested as matter, knowledge, and activities, put the eternally transcendental living entity under condition of cause and effect and make him responsible for such activities. Put by Srila Prabhupada. Factually, the living entities are not meant to be so conditioned by material energy, but due to their being affected by the false sense of loading it over the material energy, they come under the influence of such potency and thus become conditioned by the three moods of material nature. This external energy of the Lord covers up the pure knowledge of the living entities eternally existing with him. But the covering is so constant that it appears that the conditioned soul is eternally ignorant. Behind the material manifestation, there are Adibhuta, Adiatma, and Adidaiva actions, which the conditioned soul in the mood of ignorance cannot see. The Adibhuta manifestation entails repetition of birth and death with old age and diseases. The Adhyatma manifestation condition the spirit soul, and the Adidaiva manifestations is the controlling system. These are the material manifestations of the cause and effect and the sense of responsibility of the conditions actors.
Thank you. It's very interesting how once we start relating to each other in the material platform, we are feeding each other ignorance. In other words, unless our relationship with other living entities and with ourselves is based on Krishna, then we're reinforcing our attachment to this world. Is that understood?
Yes.
We're reattaching ourselves every time we speak about the material energy. Our affection for it grows, and that's Maya at her best. It grows, and that's how we become captivated. So it's very, very important for us to always, or to try to think in terms of Krishna. Think in terms of relating to everything that we see, trying to see Krishna's hand in everything. Sometimes I would pray, please let me understand how you're relating to me. But actually, Krishna's relating to us in every single thing that we do. And we have a choice to see it as Krishna or the material energy. If we see it as Krishna, we become released. If we don't, then we become more and more entangled. Is that true?
One point in that is as we hear more about how everything was manifested by him, it's more scientific and easier rather than just a sentiment, oh, God's everywhere. We're actually seeing scientifically how he is manifest in everything. And therefore it becomes more of a real experience rather than just a sentiment.
Thank you. That's why we're reading this, to see how we can see Krishna in everything. Very good. Thank you, Prati. So now I'll have Madhurya Leela. Could you read? And then we can have some general questions if that. Wait a minute. We're not finished with the text. There's a few more. Yeah, go on. Why don't you read this, Madhurya?
Bhagavatam 2:5-20. O Brahmana, Narada, the superseer, the transcendent Lord is beyond the perception of the material senses of the living entities because of the above mentioned three modes of nature. But he is the controller of everyone, including me. Purport. The Lord is not approachable by everyone because he's curtained by curtained by his yoga maya potency. The devotees of the Lord who are transcendental to the above mentioned three modes of material nature can see the all blissful transcendental form of the Lord with their vision of love in the attitude of pure devotional service.
Tell us something about that real quick, Madhurya. Pure devotional service.
Well, he's only available not through only through devotional service, pure devotional service, but because he is covered by Yoga Maya, and for those who are not interested, they can't see him.
Right. Thank you. That's perfect. If we're not interested, we will not see Krishna. And he can hide. He can hide. And then we become more and more entangled in the world. So this is the last verse. Faye, would you like to read that?
Srimad-Bhagavatam 2.5.21. The Lord, who is the controller of all energies, thus creates, and by his own potency, eternal time, the fate of all living entities and their particular nature for which they were created, and he again merges them independently. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. So the creation and annihilation of the material worlds is a regular action of the Lord, just to allow the conditioned souls to play as they like, and thereby create their own fate of being differently created again in terms of their independent desires at the time of annihilation. Nonetheless, he keeps himself distinct from such creation as a Brahm or complete, and so no one should wrongly think that his personal feature is not existent due to his impersonal unlimited expansions. The impersonal expansion is a manifestation of his energy, and he is always in his personal feature, despite his innumerable unlimited expansions of impersonal energies. Bhagavad Gita 9.5 through 7. It is said that although the air and the atoms rest within the huge expansion of the sky, which is like the resting reservoir of everything materially created, still the sky remains separate and unaffected. Similarly, although the Supreme Lord maintains everything created by his expansion of energy, he always remains separate. The whole creation thus merges within the body of the transcendental Narayana at the time of annihilation, and the creation emanates from his body again with the same unchanging categories of fate and individual nature.
Thank you. Do you want to comment on that, Faye?
It's amazing to think of the constant process of recycling that is happening in multiple universes and multiple times over and over. Yet Krishna, who created everything, always remains distinctly separate from them. So no matter how frantic we are in our world and thoughts, all of this is always going on somewhere, and Krishna is always in charge and unaffected.
Yes, he is. And when we take birth again in this material world and have desires and we merge into the body of Mahavishnu at the end of this whole creation, at the annihilation, and we stay in that body for billions and billions and billions of years, then when we come out again, the same tendencies that we had before become awakened. So best we don't stay around. But do you have something to say?
I was just saying, who can give an example that we've read in the first canto of who that happened to?
Oh.
Karna, do you know?
Hint, give him a hint.
Oh, let's see if somebody else knows. I got to see who else is there. Who else studied the first canto with us? Pritam Day must know. Pritam, do you know who that happened to?
Prabhu, can you repeat that question again? I think I
The
missed it.
question is that when the annihilation happens, the living entities who are in the material world all merge back into the body of Mahavishnu and remain there because there's no manifested cosmos at that time. Then again, when he breathes out and the universes are again created, each individual living entity again takes up the same fate, nature, intuition, and karma that they had from their previous experience in the material world that all manifests again. And in the first canto, we read about someone who actually merged into the body of the Lord and then was again manifested in this material world when it was created. Do you remember who that was?
I think it was Narad Muni.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Very good. Beautiful.
I think Mohit also, it looked like he was going to say Narada Muni.
Did you know Mohit?
You didn't know? Oh. All right, does anybody have any question or with a comment? Because believe it or not, we finished all the verses in 1 hour. Okay, we have two, Tisha and then Bhadra.
Maybe this is silly, but I just wonder why in this part we refer to Krishna as like why is it Narayana? Why wouldn't it be Vishnu? Or like why is it that? Is there a reason why it's that particular name?
Hachi?
Yes, each name of the Lord relates to a particular characteristic of him. I think as you read the Bhagavad Gita, you hear some of those different exchanges between Arjuna, who's called different names by Krishna, and then Arjuna also calls him different names, Madhusudana, which means that he killed the demon Madhu, so please kill my doubts. That correlation is there. Keshava means one with beautiful hair. So Nara is one, Bhadra, you can help with the Sanskrit and the etymological understanding of Nara and Ayana. Nara means person and Ayana means one who lies down. So that person who, am I right, Bhadra?
Yeah.
She's still here. So that aspect of Narayan, of the Lord called Narayan, can deal specifically with the manifestation of the cosmos and the maintainer of that. Vishnu also as the maintainer of the mode of goodness. So these different names are specific. It's a good question. It's a good point.
Okay, also, I just want to add that Krishna has infinite amount of manifestations, and they are all Krishna. He has infinite amount, just like the whole Brahma Jyoti is Krishna as well, and yet it is his reflection, and it can act just like Krishna. It just gives it's the seed of all that is in the spiritual and material world. So Krishna has an infinite amount of names, and it's true each name is for a different purpose, but it doesn't lessen whom he is. He just has that name for a different service or aspect of his nature.
What does Lord Chaitanya say about all those names?
Oh, who knows that verse? Hundreds of millions of names, like Krishna and Govinda. There's Vaishnavi, she knows. You want to say? Say the second Shikshastika.
Nam namakari bahuda nija sarva shakti tatrarpitha niyamitaha smaranena kalaha etadrishi tava kripa bhagavan mamapi durdaiva me drishmiha janina na anuragaha.
Good. Who knows it in English? Okay, I know it in English. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone can benedict all living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental potencies. Can you imagine? Thus you, but I'm so unfortunate. I have no desire. I have no taste for chanting your holy name. Can you imagine that all of Krishna's potencies is in his name? That would be enough for anybody to start chanting. You're directly associating with Krishna by chanting his holy name. Whether we feel it or not, That's the truth. The truth is not based on what we understand. That's why we have to submissive, those 3 words that we saw in the beginning of the review here: submissiveness, surrender, and inquiries. So Bhadra, did you have a question?
This is not related to, but before we come to next Saturday, can you tell me up to what chapter or text I have to read?
Up to now?
No, from now to up to for next Saturday.
Give me a second. Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. From 22 to 42.
Ooh,
Thank you.
lots of verses.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else have something to say?
Any
or
questions,
ask?
Mohit? Are you absorbing it, or is it?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Any questions?
Oh, no. I'm enjoying it.
You're catching it? You're following the points?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
How
Good.
about Isaac? You have any questions? Isaac, Mr. Higgins, Mrs. Higgins?
No questions.
Okay.
My
Anything?
only comment, Hare Krishna.
That pretty much sums it up. Good.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, wait a minute. We have Pritam Day. Pritam, you'd like to say something?
Yes. We know that Parikshit Maharaj had only 7 days to live. And in those 7 days, Srila Sukdev Goswami narrated the whole Srimad-Bhagavatam to him, right? So I was wondering, why did Srila Sukdev Goswami, spend so much time on creation? Like we study this in 2nd canto, we study this in 3rd canto, we study this in maybe 5th canto to some extent. So what is it that it is trying to tell us? What is the practical application of this?
That's a great question. And even Prabhupada answers the question in the purports. First of all, we have to understand the greatness of God. We have to understand that we are not God and how to get back to the spiritual world. First, we won't have any faith. This is actually to build our faith. These first cantos are to build our faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? Where, as I said before, we are in this material world to become purified. Everything that we do should be for our own purification. Pati, were you going to say something?
Yeah. When Lord Chaitanya was speaking with Prakasananda Saraswati, Prakasananda was asking him, why do you hear and why are you singing and dancing? Why don't you just study the Vedas? And in their subsequent discussions, Lord Chaitanya was explaining that all of the Vedas are made up of 3 different progressive steps: the Sambandha, Abhideha, and Prayojana. Sambandha means our relationship with the Supreme Lord. Right now, we don't know that relationship, our eternal constitutional position, the Sthayi Bhava, the natural, inherent, eternal, loving relationship we have to Lord. Very, very specific. Man, woman, how old, where do we live, what is our nature, what are the characteristics, what are the clothes we wear? All these things are unknown to us. So Sambandha is developing our relationship. Abhideha is how to act according to that relationship. Just like we have different relationships in this material world, and we have to learn by social restrictions, customs, different things like that, how to act accordingly to time, place, and circumstance. So the same thing has to develop in the living entities according to their relationship with the Lord, how to act. And the more that they act in that relationship, the more they understand the relationship, Sambandha and Abhideha, then gradually what happens is the natural affection, which is inherent in the soul, just like those potencies within the seed, gradually manifest themselves into little buds and creepers, and then gradually grow to flowers and fruits. So in the same way, all these different aspects of understanding the Lord, how to act in relationship to the Lord, and how to develop our love are inherent within the texts of Srimad-Bhagavatam. And the liberated soul, Sukadev Goswami, following his father, Vyasadeva, who follows Narada, who follows Brahma, who heard this directly from the Lord, is the one presenting this. So we shouldn't think that it's not very important. Look who presented it. Look who told us in the beginning that this is important. Learn this. It's not just knowledge. It's actually inherent. It's part of the growth of that creeper, of our relationship of love with the Lord. So that's my understanding of why we're doing this.
And Prabhupada often says, we can't jump over. You don't jump over. Let's see, if you're in the second grade and you want to become a doctor and you think that you can just immediately go to college, you will miss all of that knowledge. We will not understand this philosophy. We spoke about this weeks ago. There's a systematic way to study the Bhagavatam. And if we do it like that, then we'll start to awaken. Just like there's a process to caring for plants. You have to give water and sunlight. There's a process. So these great saintly people, these self-realized souls are revealing the Bhagavatam to us for our own purification. So this is a system. It's very important.